We're going to start kind of moving forward in the book of Isaiah. Here we're at. It's like this book is really a very solemn, not being sad, but a very serious call to the whole universe, to anyone that would hear, to basically, I guess you could call it, to come into the courtroom to hear God's charge against Israel. God ain't real happy with Israel here when Isaiah starts. And he's kind of just telling about the stuff that he's got on his mind. And he really wants the world, he really wants the Christian body, to hear why he's not happy with them. Isaiah lived in a time of great tension when he lived. We decided that was about 670, 80, almost 800 years before Christ, okay? It mostly was a time of crisis in world history. World-shaking events were transpiring all over the place. Things were happening. There were catastrophic and catalytic judgments that were taking place. I mean, a lot of serious things going on. There was a great upheaval in the social order. The people were confused about who they were, what they were, and where they were, at that time. Also at that time, there was a newer nation arisen in the north, and it was moving toward a world domination, and this is Assyria. Assyria was the most brutal army ever marched toward world conquest, and that was their thing. They wanted to just take over the world. They wanted to stomp over everybody. And Israel's northern kingdom had already been captured by Assyria, and Assyria had an army of about 185,000 people strong, so they were something to mess with. Just a little outside the walls of Jerusalem is kind of where they were posted up right about the time that this book of Isaiah started. So the king then was King Hezekiah. And Hezekiah enters the temple to turn to God in prayer. He knows there's a lot of difficult things going on. And so like a good leader, he goes to God. And God sends this prophet, be Isaiah, with this encouraging word. And he assured them that Assyria would never take Judah, that the Assyrian army would never set foot in the streets of Jerusalem, and that they would never cross the threshold of any of the gates to the city of the great city of Jerusalem of the great king. So this was going on, and this was great news. But at the time God sends this, God's also then preparing another city, a nation of Babylon, where the head of gold, it would be kind of the city of the head of gold down by the banks of the river Euphrates. And this nation is the nation that was going to come and eventually take the Israelites into captivity, unless Judah turned back to God, because they had turned away from God. And so God's already got this punishment deal kind of set up for them, all right? So God was really and truly during this time trying to give Judah another chance, in order to establish the justice of his cause, God wanted to take the Israelites into court, and he held them before this bar of justice. In other words, God said, I've given y'all rules to follow. I've given y'all ways to live, and y'all aren't living that way. And God don't like that when we kind of turn our thumb our nose at him, and say, God, I'm going to live the way I want to. That usually don't last very long, and it doesn't work out real well whenever we do it. So it's not working for Jerusalem anyway. And so he's given Jerusalem this opportunity and the Israelites to answer the charge, to hear his verdicts and his decrees about what's going to happen. And what he wants them to do is he wants them to throw themselves on the mercy of his court, or to God, and say, God, just whatever you need to do with us, we want to surrender to you. So God's inviting us through this book. He's inviting us into the court, so to speak, to see if he is just, he's going to treat these people well and treat them fair. You know, and it was a proper thing for that time and for that generation to go into the courtroom for the way that he was asking, or for the way they were acting. But God also wanted them to all see him in his righteous judgment. He wanted to see this throne of judgment, you know, in this and kind of, I don't know, I guess you could say it was kind of a sensational scene. It was a lot of drama involved in this deal, but God was wanting them to see that he was just and that he was right in the things that he was trying to do. You know, in the thinking of the world, you know, especially the way a lot of people think today, and it was back then, I believe, a lot, is that God had kind of been removed from the throne of judgment, you know, and he's been kind of divested of his authority and robbed of his regal prerogatives, you know, or kind of shorn of his locks, had his head shaved, or whatever you want to say, as, you know, as the moral ruler and it's his universe. You know, he's been towed to the edge of the world and kind of pushed over like excess baggage, and that's all wrong. And when we think it and when they thought it, it's a very blasphemous picture of God. You know, here's the thing. God's still on the throne, and he is still the moral ruler of his universe. You know, he is still upon the throne of justice. He has not abdicated it in any way, and he still punishes sin. And we need to realize that then as well as now. Now, Isaiah records the principles upon which God judges the nation, and we'll read more about that. And God raises up these nations and he puts them down. We'll see that God makes these decisions. If God wants you to do well and be successful, he'll help and raise you up. But if you don't agree and don't do what he wants you to do, then he can put you down just as easy. The kingdoms of this world today, well, we all know that who the prince of the air is in our world today, and that's Satan. But look, even God still can overrule all of those things. God has permitted great nations to rise. He's also permitted Satan to use them. But when it's time in God's program for certain nations to move off the stage or to be pushed back down or to pushed into righteousness, God's still in control. Even of these things that Satan thinks that he's the master of. You know, we still need to know. And this book is going to tell us that God's still in control. And Satan cannot withstand whatever God's got going on. He may be tough, but he ain't that tough. You know, even God's own people, the Jews, are a testimony of the fact that he rules the affairs of the nations of this world, because his chosen people got to the point to where they weren't wanting to do what he wanted to do. And so he told them, he said, hey, y'all are the chosen people and y'all are the ones that can make it, but I'm fixing to punish y'all. I'm fixing to chastise you, you know, because you're not doing what I want to. So what we're going to see in this book of Isaiah is that there's no one who is not susceptible to the guidance and the punishment of God if we step out of line, okay? There's an expression that keeps reoccurring in this book, and I think we'll see it a few more times, and it comes from the songs of Moses, which is a song that the children of Israel sang as they crossed the Red Sea. And it says something like this: Jehovah is a man of war, yes he is, and he will not compromise with sin. He will not accept the white flag of surrender. He is moving forward in undivitating, unhesitating, and uncompromised fury against it. So there would be no hope for man today if he could stay, if he could say with Isaiah. And Isaiah said, I saw also the Lord sitting upon the throne. It says that in Sigma. So it's kind of hard to understand. But what this stuff is telling us here is that, that God is most definitely under control. And God doesn't want us to just be a surrender or white flag. He don't want us doing the I'm sorry thing all the time. He wants us to change the way we live, okay? He wanted them to change for the better. And so that's kind of where it gets. And so that's just a little bit more about where this book's going and and the time that it's written in. So that's going to move us to verse 1. We're just going to get 2 verses done tonight. So we'll go to verse 1. It says this. The vision of Isaiah the son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. These guys were all kind of kings at one time, kings one right after the other. You know, so it talks about all of them there. Now, the vision for Judah and Jerusalem, and it's not anywhere else. I mean, this is a specific, this prophecy is pretty specific to them and what they had going on. Now, Uzziah was the 10th king of Judah. And Uzziah didn't do what he was supposed to do. He actually went into what they called at the temple the holy place. And the holy place is where only God was supposed to reside. Well, Uzziah thought he was something pretty big, and he went off into that place. And God turned him into a leper. Excuse me. And so even though he wasn't permitted to do it, he did it. And although classed as a good king, that's what he was. You know, he was a good king. He just did bad that one way, but he honored God because we see him at the start of this. He's going to the temple. You know, he's the one that's going to be seeking out for God for these problems going on. So he's a pretty good king in all that aspect, all right? Now, then after him came Jotham, his son. And his son who followed him, he was a pretty good king too, and he believed in God. But then came his grandson. Then come Ahaz, Uzziah's grandson, and he was a bad king. He was evil in most all of his ways, all right? So, and then finally, there was Hezekiah who's come, and we'll read more about him. And he's the last king that's mentioned in all this, and he was another good king, and he was a king that he asked for his life to be prolonged, and God granted this desire for him. God let his life linger and to go on longer than it was going to, and it kind of appears, and we'll see that asking this maybe was just prideful, or maybe it was just a mistake on Hezekiah's part, because there was a lot of bad things that happened after God gave him these extra years in his last years that actually were the undoing, you know, of his kingdom. So asking for this time, I don't know. Maybe it's like sometimes we got to be careful what you ask God for, because sometimes he gives you just exactly what you ask for. He don't give you no extra, you know. And Isaiah, you know, Hezekiah asked him for more time. But evidently he didn't distinguish it as, Lord, I need more time for this kingdom. You know, it's kind of like he was just being greedy and wanted just more time. So God gave him more time, but there was a lot of grief that came along with it too. So we'll have to see more about how that works out for him. And then we got verse number 2. It says, Hear, O heavens, and give an ear, O earth, for the Lord has spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. Now, God begins this prophecy here kind of majestically with this "Hear, O heavens" thing, you know. It's kind of a general judgment kind of against Judah, and he again is calling the world so to look into his courtroom, as I described it, to listen to these proceedings. These things were going on as these people have rebelled, you know. He's trying his people, and God does nothing in secret. He doesn't do it in a corner, and he doesn't do it in the dark. So he's wanting everybody, you know, to see the deal that's going on with this kingdom. And, you know, and where he starts out right here with this, O heavens, and give an ear, O earth. Well, in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32, it begins the very, very same way. It says, "Give an ear, O ye heavens, and I will speak, and hear, O earth, the words of my mouth." And so it's like he's talking and he's calling everybody to attention, but it's also kind of a commanding voice that God's got going. And then like his people are rebelling against him, and he's saying, "Okay, dummies, y'all need to listen to me, you know. You need to hear what I've got to say. I'm not talking just to be rattling my jaws. There's some things that we have to going on that we have to get straight for y'all to continue to move on and to prosper, okay? So when God put the nation of Israel in this land, okay, when he moved them out of Egypt and brought them to the river and moved them through the river and moved them into the promised land and busted them up into the 12 tribes and gave them all places to go and gave them all places to prosper. You know, he kind of took them and homesteaded them, I guess if you wanted to say that. He gave them this place to stay and this place to start out there in the promised land. But here's the thing. If you go back and you look at that, there's a lot of conditions that were put on them. It was like, in other words, there was a lot of, God said, "I'm going to do this if you'll do this, and I'm going to do this if you'll do this," you know. And the people got over there. They had the pressure off of them from Egypt, you know. They were out of the desert. They were eating meat and fruits and vegetables again. They weren't just eating manna, you know, and things like that. And so life seemed to be really, really pretty good for them. And y'all know what we do as people. What do we do when life gets good? We go off track, you know. We start following ourselves because all of a sudden we think, "I did this. You know, it wasn't God that brought me to this good thing. I did this." And, you know, and it happens a lot. We see it in church all the time, and it happens to us all the time. The best thing we can do is to catch it in ourselves before it gets out of hand, you know. So that's really what's going on with these people in these first verses that's starting out here. There's some other stuff that kind of changes pace, and I didn't think we'd have a whole lot of time to get into that tonight. And so I'm going to just kind of, you know, stop there. But this is the thing. I think these first couple of books are going to be kind of like, man, this is a lot of information, but it's not really making that much sense. But I think if you'll read through there and look at it, and I think as the more as we go into it and we see some more of this prophecy and we see these reasons that Isaiah was sent to the people, and we remember that this is a very hard time. It's a very discontented time, you know, and the people are very discontented and wanting to do, you know, their own thing. Kind of makes you sound like it's a lot like today, you know. People just wanting to do their own thing and all discontented with the way the world is. But we're going to see, you know, why Isaiah was there, and we're going to see these things that God tells him to help these people and see if they pay attention to what God's got to say, kind of like us. You know, we expose ourselves to it, but are we paying attention? And are we trying to do it? That's the important thing for the people. So, okay, you guys online, that's where we're going to end up tonight, because I know everybody wants to go home and thaw their turkey out. So, God bless you guys for being online. You know, if we can help you, y'all come and see us. I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving, you know, and y'all give thanks to the Lord for all He's done, and let's get ready to celebrate a wonderful Christmas season, because Jesus, He's our reason. Amen. So God bless, and we'll catch y'all later.